It looks like it's failed, at least so far, Manu,
Yeah,
to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security. And now they're taking up this separate legislation, a standalone aid bill for Israel, $17.6 billion for Israel, a standalone bill that President Biden has vowed to veto because it's not part of this broader compromise package.
And Wolf, this is also expected to fail, this measure, because of the opposition from Democrats as well as some members on the far right. So we're going to see two failures here from the pushed forward by the House Republican leadership. And just on the Mayorkas vote, this is a setback, a major setback, one that they had pushed hard to get done and expected this would happen swiftly, but blowing back at them, even as they expected they would have the votes. This is exactly what happened, Wolf. I want to give you a sense of it. There are three Republicans, actually, there are four officially Republicans who voted against this, but three of them are actually firm no votes. It's Ken Buck of Colorado, Tom McClintock of California, and Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin. They are the no votes. A fourth member, Blake Moore, voted against it, but that was for procedural reasons. So they could call up the vote again. So when this vote happens again in the future to impeach Mayorkas, they almost certainly will have the votes to go forward because Steve Scalise, the majority leader, will be back after recovering from an illness, so they'll have a majority vote. But a short-lived victory, but still a victory for Democrats in scuttling this effort that Republicans had hoped they could cheer for the impeachment of Mayorkas, making him the second cabinet secretary ever to face high crimes or misdemeanor charges from the United States House of Representatives. Not happening today because of this failure here. And just in a matter of moments, we do expect this also to fail. Wolf, this vote on the floor to approve $17.6 billion in aid to Israel would need 2/3 majority of the House to do it because House Republicans in the Freedom Caucus, a far-right faction, said that they would not go along with their leadership's effort because it does not cut spending. And then Democrats said they would not go along with it also, Wolf, because it was not tied to aid to Ukraine, aid to Taiwan, as well as the new border security package that had been negotiated with the White House with a handful of senators. They said they did not want to move on this on a standalone basis. The White House has issued a veto threat, and also the Democratic leaders in the House said they would absolutely not go for this. So we do not expect there to be enough Democratic support to get the 2/3 majority to get this Israel aid package through the House. So two put efforts by the new speaker to get it through the House, impeachment of Mayorkas and aid to Israel, both on the verge of collapsing after this pretty dramatic series of moments here on the House floor.
So just the bottom line on all of this, Manu, if the aid bill for Israel fails and the impeachment vote fails, this would be a huge embarrassment for the Republican leadership in the House.
It certainly would, Wolf, and it would raise questions about their legislative strategy, how they plan to move forward from here. Just on the issue of aid itself, there's no path forward for moving forward on aid to Israel, moving forward with aid to Ukraine, moving forward with aid to Taiwan, things that have been called for some time, particularly the Ukraine piece at a time of its war against Russia as money from the United States is drying out. There is no path for passage for that. Also on the border security piece, the Republicans have demanded that they must have border security provisions, new policies in place before they greenlight all those other aid packages. Now they have cut a deal with the White House, a handful of senators. That is not good enough for the House Republican leadership. And because they are opposed, the Senate Republicans are opposed, and they plan to kill that tomorrow. So what we are seeing in just a matter of hours, so many things collapse here in front of our eyes. Israel, border security, Ukraine, Taiwan, and now the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, all showing you the perils of managing and governing in this narrowly divided Republican House, Wolf.
Very interesting indeed. Very significant historic voting going on right now. Manu, stand by. You're still going to be very busy up there. Right now, I want to bring in former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, what's your reaction to these, apparently both of these votes, these failed House votes?
Well, this is a massive defeat for the leadership of the GOP. Let's keep in mind, so Gallagher, Buck, and McClintock are the three no votes on Mayorkas. That took a lot of courage to do that. Blake Moore, but that was for a different reason. That took a lot of courage to do that because the 217 or so other Republicans knew that this should not have gone forward, but you had three with the courage to say no. Now, that also portends anything now for the potential Biden impeachment. You know they're going to have to try to bring that forward no matter what evidence they have. If they cannot pass an impeachment of this cabinet member, they're going to have a really hard time getting through the impeachment of Joe Biden. So this is a big embarrassment for Speaker Johnson. On the Israel aid, look, everybody wants aid, almost everybody wants aid to Israel. But the reason Speaker Johnson is putting this forward is to take off the pressure to bring forward Ukraine aid. That's the whole reason Israel aid is coming forward. So thankfully, there are enough people that are going to have the courage to say no to that, because they say, look, yes, Israel's important, but Ukraine right now is basically starved of shells to defeat the Russians, and they can defeat them with our help. So this is the kind of stand that needs to happen if we're going to bring Ukraine aid to the floor. And by the way, if it came to the floor, it would pass overwhelmingly. Speaker Johnson is trying to stop that from happening to assuage his far-right base.
It's interesting because the $17.6 billion in proposed aid for Israel normally is something that Democrats and Republicans would support. But in this particular case, so many of them are opposing it. And President Biden himself says if it were to pass, he would veto it because he wants it to be part of this broader package, including the billions in proposed aid for Ukraine.
Well, that's correct. And Speaker Johnson and those that are putting this on the floor are hoping that the American people don't understand the game, because they're going to go out, they're going to attack after this vote anybody that voted against this. But the American people are smart enough to know this is not about aid to Israel. This is about killing aid to Ukraine, which the American people support. And so, yes, like there is massive, you're going to have some on the far left and far right that oppose aid to Israel on the principle of it. But the vast majority of people don't, but they recognize Ukraine has to get done.
Yeah, in his statement that was released by the White House, the president made it clear he supports aid to Israel, but he wants to be part of this broader package, including the aid to Ukraine and the border protection money, as well as the humanitarian assistance to Palestinians in Gaza. That's why he says he would veto a separate aid package for Israel. Let me go quickly back to Manu Raju, our chief congressional correspondent. What else are you hearing, Manu?
Well, if this is about to fail, this vote to improve this aid to Israel, as we had expected, we expect they need a 2/3 majority to get there. That's roughly about 70 Democratic votes or so that they will need. As you can see on your screen, there are 46 Democrats who are voting in favor of this, 13 Republicans who are voting against this. They need, in full attendance, they would need 290 votes in full attendance. There are a couple of absences here, so they are not going to get there. So this will be two failures by the Republican leadership to getting these bills through on the House. They try to move through this Israel bill to try to preempt the Senate's bipartisan action here, to try to put pressure on senators to move forward on this clean Israel bill that does not have spending cuts. Remember, the first action by the new speaker when he came into power was to move an Israel aid package that included cuts to IRS spending. Democrats rejected that, said they would not agree to those cuts. Then the speaker tried to essentially call their bluff, said, I'll move on this now without any cuts whatsoever. But Democrats, because they want all the other issues, Ukraine, Taiwan, and those border package as well, are voting against him. Well, we should listen to this right now. They are calling this vote almost certainly meaning a failure here, Wolf, and he's gaveling it shut. It looks like this bill has failed, Wolf.
A failure indeed. They just announced that the aid to Israel package, separate package, a standalone package as it's called, has failed.